Can we edit humans? Not heal them, not treat them. Edit them. Pause for a second. If your brain immediately jumped to CRISPR, DNA, or gene therapy, congratulations, you're already inside the illusion of understanding. Because recognizing a tool is not the same as understanding what the tool does to reality. Here's the strange thing. The more advanced humans become, the faster we mistake control for comprehension. We've done this before, many times, and every single time we were convinced this time is different. Let me start with something deeply uncomfortable. For most of human history, people believed life worked like paint. Mix red and white, you get pink. Mix tall and short, you get medium. Mix smart and dull, you get average. This idea wasn't questioned for thousands of years. Not because people were foolish, but because it felt right. Intuition ruled science long before evidence did. Then, in the 1800s, a quiet monk started growing pea plants in a monastery garden. No ambition to change humanity. No desire for fame. Just obsessive curiosity. Gregor Mendel noticed something that should have been impossible under the old world view. Traits didn't blend. They appeared. They disappeared. They skipped generations. They came back unchanged. Life wasn't paint. It was packets. That single realization shattered centuries of confidence, even though most scientists ignored it at first. Why? Because new truths don't fight ignorance. They fight certainty. This pattern never went away. Fast forward to the 20th century. We discover DNA. Suddenly, life has a structure, a sequence, a language, and humans immediately do what they always do when something looks like language. They assume it can be edited safely. Here's where Richard Feynman would quietly step in and ruin the party. Feynman had a rule: simple, brutal, and deeply unpopular. If you think you understand something, try to explain it simply. If you can't, you don't. Modern genetics sounds confident, but scratch the surface, and the certainty collapses. We say gene for intelligence, but intelligence isn't one thing. It's memory, abstraction, emotion, context, culture. Large-scale genome-wide studies suggest that intelligence emerges from the combined influence of many small genetic effects, deeply intertwined with environment, education, stress, and chance in ways we still struggle to fully map. We say gene for aggression, but aggression can be violence or courage. We say gene for disease, but disease in one context can be survival in another, as seen in genetic traits that increase resistance to malaria while causing serious illness under different conditions. The language lies to us. Genes don't behave like switches. They behave like networks. Change one node, and the whole system adapts, sometimes in ways you never predicted. Here's a question no one likes to answer honestly. If we edit humans to remove suffering, what happens to resilience? Because resilience isn't stored in a gene, it emerges from struggle. Ancient thinkers sensed this long before biology existed. Hippocrates believed the body healed itself through balance. Disturb the balance too aggressively and illness followed. He was wrong about many things, but right about one. Intervention always has consequences. Modern science didn't erase that rule. It just made us forget it. Now let's talk about power. The moment humans realized DNA could be modified, something shifted psychologically. Life stopped being sacred. It became adjustable, upgradable, customizable. That should terrify you more than any science fiction movie ever could. Because once something becomes customizable, it becomes marketable. And markets don't care about philosophy. They care about demand. Today, it's disease prevention. Gene editing therapies for inherited blood disorders have already entered real-world clinical use, marking a turning point where this technology is no longer theoretical. Tomorrow, its enhancement, better memory, higher focus, lower anxiety, sharper reflexes, all reasonable, all seductive. But here's the problem no one wants to say out loud. Every enhancement is also a trade-off. Reduce anxiety too much, and you reduce caution. Increase focus too much, and you reduce flexibility. Suppress aggression, and you suppress resistance. Evolution didn't optimize humans for happiness. It optimized them for survival. Editing humans assumes we know better than evolution. That assumption has never aged well. Before genetics, humans tried to edit society through forced norms, through eugenics, through so-called scientific hierarchies of worth. Each time, the language was improvement. Each time, the outcome was cruelty, not because people were evil, but because they were certain. Feynman warned that certainty without humility is the enemy of science. And right now, humanity is more certain than it deserves to be. We can cut DNA. We can splice sequences. We can silence genes. But here's what we cannot do. We cannot predict long-term complexity. We cannot simulate a lifetime. We cannot simulate a society. We cannot simulate evolution. Editing humans isn't a single decision. It's a chain reaction. And the most dangerous chain reactions are the ones that start with good intentions. So before we rush forward, let me ask you something personal. If you had been born with a gene society didn't like, would you trust that society to edit you fairly? Hold that question. Because even today, while somatic gene editing changes that affect only the treated individual continues to advance rapidly, heritable editing of embryos remains under intense scrutiny worldwide. Scientific caution persists. Commercial pressure grows. The tension between possibility and responsibility has not been resolved. Here's where the illusion finally cracks. Genes do not cause traits the way people think they do. A gene does not say, be intelligent. A gene does not say, be aggressive. A gene does not say, be creative. A gene says, when this chemical environment exists, respond like this. That's it. Everything else emerges. This is where Feynman would interrupt again and say something annoying but honest. The problem is not that we don't know the answer. The problem is that we don't even know the right question yet. Modern genetics often pretends the question is simple. Which gene causes this? But biology doesn't work in straight lines. It works in feedback loops. One gene affects protein production. Proteins affect cell behavior. Cells affect tissue. Tissue affects organs. Organs affect behavior. Behavior affects environment. Environment feeds back into gene expression. You're not editing a sentence. You're poking a hurricane. Let me give you a real example scientists struggled with for decades. Some people are born with a genetic condition that prevents them from feeling pain. At first, it sounds like a miracle. No suffering, no chronic pain, no fear of injury. Then reality hits. They bite through their tongues as children. They walk on broken bones without noticing. Infections spread silently. Joints deteriorate prematurely. Pain wasn't a flaw. It was a warning system. Pain sensitivity has a genetic basis. So tell me, do we edit it out? The moment you say yes, you're not curing humans. You're redesigning trade-offs you barely understand. And even with increasingly precise tools, unintended changes elsewhere in the genome remain a known challenge, with consequences that may only appear years later. And intelligence? That's where things get really dark. For decades, scientists searched for the intelligence gene. They failed. Not because intelligence isn't biological, but because it's polygenic, distributed across thousands of genes, each contributing tiny effects, heavily shaped by nutrition, education, stress, culture, and randomness. Some genetic patterns linked to high creativity also overlap with vulnerability to severe mental illness. Edit too aggressively, and you don't get smarter humans. You get flatter ones, safer, more predictable, less innovative. Evolution doesn't reward perfection. It rewards adaptability. And adaptability comes from variation, not optimization. Charles Darwin never described evolution as progress. He described it as fit for now, not best, not ideal, just good enough to survive current conditions. When humans try to improve evolution, they assume conditions are stable. They never are. Now let's talk about something most popular discussions still underestimate. Epigenetics. Your genes don't just exist. They turn on and off based on experience. Stress can alter gene expression. Trauma can alter gene expression. Nutrition, social bonds, and environment can alter gene expression. And some of these changes can influence future generations without changing the DNA sequence itself. Life edits genes already, without scissors. So when humans step in with CRISPR, we're not entering a clean system. We're entering a moving target. Editing a genome today doesn't freeze its future. It collides with biology's own editing mechanism. That collision is unpredictable. Feynman warned about this in physics. When systems become complex enough, prediction fails not because of ignorance, but because of sensitivity. Small changes, massive outcomes, that's chaos theory. Biology is chaos theory with flesh. Now here's the part most people miss. When you edit humans, you don't just change biology. You change selection pressure. If traits can be engineered, they stop being naturally selected. They become socially selected. Money decides. Culture decides. Politics decides. Not nature. Imagine a world where enhancement costs money. Who gets edited first? Who decides what better means? And once some humans are edited, what happens to the rest? You don't get equality. You get stratification written into biology. This isn't science fiction. It's economics plus genetics. And economics has never been gentle. People say, we'll regulate it. That's adorable. Every powerful technology in history escaped regulation once demand became strong enough. Weapons, drugs, data. Genes won't be different. Ask yourself honestly, would you trust the current world with the power to redesign future humans? The same world that can't agree on basic human rights. The same world driven by fear, profit, and tribalism. Feynman believed science needed freedom, but he also believed scientists needed responsibility. Right now, we have one without the other. Tools faster than our ethics. Capabilities faster than our wisdom. Confidence faster than our understanding. History says that combination always ends badly. At some point, science runs into a wall it cannot break. Not because the tools are weak, but because the question itself changes shape. That wall is consciousness. You can map neurons, trace electrical impulses, predict behavior with frightening accuracy. And still, you cannot find the moment where matter becomes experience, where chemistry becomes fear, where electricity becomes love, where biology becomes meaning. That gap matters more than any gene, because if you don't know where the self begins, you don't know where editing should stop. Genes influence temperament. Temperament influences perception. Perception shapes reality. So when you edit genes, You're not just changing bodies. You're quietly rewriting how future humans will experience the world. That should slow you down. People say, we're only editing the physical. That's a comforting lie. There is no clean boundary between physical and psychological. The same chemistry that regulates fear also fuels curiosity. The same systems that create attachment also create vulnerability. Nature bundles traits together, and humans are very bad at unbundling things. Without breaking them, we like to believe suffering is a design flaw. But suffering is also information. Pain teaches limits. Loss teaches value. Fear teaches caution. Remove too much of it, and you don't create a paradise. You create a species that doesn't know when it's in danger. Some people are born unable to feel pain. It sounds like a gift. It isn't. They injure themselves constantly. They don't learn boundaries. Their bodies deteriorate silently. Pain was never the enemy. Ignorance was. Now scale that idea up. What happens when we remove psychological pain, anxiety, sadness, existential discomfort? You don't just remove suffering. You remove depth. A world without emotional lows is also a world without emotional highs, because contrast creates meaning. Ancient thinkers warned that engineering perfect happiness destroys the conditions that make happiness recognizable. Modern science often ignores that warning because it sounds unscientific. It isn't. It's system-level thinking. Highly optimized systems are efficient but fragile. They perform beautifully under expected conditions and collapse when reality changes. Nature never optimized humans for perfection. It optimized us for survival under uncertainty. Editing humans assumes uncertainty can be managed. History disagrees. Feynman believed uncertainty wasn't a temporary inconvenience. He believed it was permanent. Science, to him, was not a march toward final truth. It was a disciplined way of living with doubt. The moment science claims certainty, it turns into ideology. And editing humans requires a level of certainty we simply do not have. We don't know what makes consciousness emerge. We don't know how identity stabilizes. We don't know how much variation is necessary for long-term survival. Yet we're willing to make irreversible decisions that echo across generation, short-term confidence, long-term consequences. That's the pattern behind most human disasters. Imagine the future, not a dystopia, but a polite one. Low aggression, emotionally regulated citizens. On paper, it looks ideal, until something unexpected happens. A climate collapse, a social fracture, a shock no model predicted. Adaptability requires friction. Creativity requires tension. Resilience requires struggle. Edited humans might be peaceful, but peace without resilience is temporary. Evolution thrives on surprise. Engineered perfection does not. And here's the most uncomfortable part of all. The biggest risk is not technological. It's psychological. Humans have not emotionally matured at the same pace as their tools. We still tribalize. We still dehumanize. We still justify harm when it benefits our group. Giving that mindset the power to redesign humanity is not progress. It's escalation. People say, we'll use it responsibly. Every generation says that. No generation has been entirely correct. So can we edit humans? Yes, technically, increasingly. But the real question, the one beneath all others, is this. Are we trying to reduce suffering, or are we trying to eliminate difference? Because difference is not noise in the system. It is the system. It's the reason humans survived ice ages, plagues, and collapse. Uniformity feels safe until reality changes. Maybe the most intelligent thing humans could do right now is not to rush forward, but to pause, to accept that some complexity cannot be shortcut, that some flaws are actually features, that not everything broken is meant to be fixed. Because editing humanity before understanding it may turn out to be the most human mistake of all. And history suggests we are very good at making those.